Okay. Hi, Stuart. How are you?
I'm doing great, Douglas. Thank you. How are you today?
Doing fine, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Nice to
Oh,
see
it's a
you.
pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, you're here to talk about your book. Your book is called Escape the Meatrix, which I see behind you there. And
Yeah.
this is about converting to a vegan diet or vegetarian diet.
I call it plant-based. So I'm advocating for widespread adoption of a plant-based lifestyle to help combat the worst case scenarios of climate change.
Okay, so is your primary reason for switching wasn't due to health, but due to environmental issues?
Well, I changed for health. Actually, I stopped eating meat when I was 23, way back in 1985. And then I became fully plant-based in 2008. And at that time, it was mainly for health. I was enjoying great health because, I've been having a really healthy lifestyle, but wanted to go fully plant-based for not only health reasons, but for the animals and for the environment. And really, my motivation for writing this book is that the mainstream media really does not talk about the environmental impact of our food choices. And so a big piece of our problem is not even being discussed. So how can we solve the climate issue when we're not even talking about one of the largest contributors to climate change, which is the food on our plates? So I felt really compelled at that time to write a book so that I could hopefully, inform people because I'm all about helping people make informed decisions. And I think the science in my book will help people make better choices in the grocery aisle and starting with the food on their plates.
You're right. We don't hear too much about the meat industry contributing to global warming, climate crisis. It's always
Mhm.
about industrial pollution, cars. That seems to be the number one focus. Uh, and you're suggesting that it is as serious or more serious than industrial pollution?
It's actually more serious, which blew my mind when I was doing the research. I took some deep dives into topics like climate change, the environment, nutrition, health, animal welfare. And yeah, I was really surprised by um, just what an impact animal-based foods has, not only for the climate, but also just degrading the earth. So much of the deforestation that has happened on our planet is so that we can grow crops to feed the animals. And when we, you know, deforest bio-rich diverse areas like the Brazilian rainforest, we're releasing tons of carbon into the atmosphere. And then we're putting methane producing livestock on that land. And it's like a double whammy in terms of the climate change.
What do you think it's going to take to get people to change to a plant based diet? Because meat eating is so ingrained in our culture. You know, turkey at Christmas, turkey certainly for Thanksgiving, hot dogs on the 4th of July. And
Right.
it's going to be difficult at best to break people of those kind of traditional habits, you know?
Yes, I think we need to start with everybody, but the younger generation, we've all been indoctrinated into eating animal-based foods. I mean, I never made a conscious choice to do that. And I don't know, did you ever make a conscious choice to start eating animal-based foods?
No, it was just part of our
Yeah.
family, you know?
Yeah, it's just what we were taught to do. Yeah, growing up, I mean, it was the food that was presented to me as a kid, and so I ate it. Um, So I think we need to start young with young children, and we need to inform them about where the food on their plates comes from. There's a study I mentioned in my book where children in the U.S. ages 4 to 8, they really are clueless as to where their food comes from, and so they're really unsuspecting meat eaters because at that age, children think of all animals as being like pets. And 84% of the children surveyed said it was wrong to eat a cow, and 79% said it was wrong to eat a pig. But there they are eating bacon. 41% of them said that bacon came from plants. So, we're indoctrinating children in our culture to eat this way, just like I was and just like you were. And as far as what it's going to take to change it, I think we have to have a discussion about it. Mainstream media needs to report on this. In Europe, they do a lot more than we do in the United States. And once people connect the dots, I think deep down, people are good people. They want to do the right thing. And they don't really realize what the impact of their choices, what is happening, when they buy an animal-based product, what the repercussions of that are in terms of the environment. And I love this quote from Business Insider. It says, "A hamburger isn't something bought and paid for, but it's a symbol of a debt that one day must be repaid." And so we need to start thinking about, the debt that future generations are going to have to pay based on the choices we make in the grocery aisle. The climate scientists say that there's no way we're going to reach our climate goals without a widespread adoption of a plant-based lifestyle. There's just simply no way to reach our goals without doing that. So I think people need to understand, make informed decisions, and I think that will motivate a lot of people, because I think deep down people want to do the right thing. They want to protect the earth.
The one thing that I've heard is that there can be issues with protein and iron deficiency for people that don't eat meat. Can you get enough of that through plant-based food?
Definitely. That is a concern that's in a box of our minds, because the meat industry wants us to have that fear. The meat industry wants us to think that it has a monopoly on nutrients like protein and iron and calcium, when it doesn't. The U.S. Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics says that plant-based foods contain all the nutrients that we need to be healthy at any stage of life. So the Meatrix doesn't have a monopoly on these ingredients, and we can find them in plants.
Are you getting any political support for this campaign? Have you done anything other than write the book?
No, I've just put my thoughts down on paper. I'm not getting any support. In fact, I'm just putting a bunch of my own sweat equity into writing it, and then my own money to finance it.
Where do you think the next step should be for you? Are you going to lobby any of your local politicians on this, or how do you get started with the campaign on this?
Well, I hope being on shows like yours, Douglas, because I think we just need to start having a conversation about this issue. There was an Oxford University did a study. It was a 5-year study. They analyzed over 38,000 farms in 119 countries. And they determined that Americans could lower their carbon footprint by 73% by becoming plant-based. That far outweighs driving an electric car or putting solar panels on your house. I mean, there's no other single thing you can do that could lower your carbon footprint by 73%. And I think if people know that, they will start making different choices in the grocery aisle. That's my hope anyway. So I think having conversations, being on shows like yours, and just getting the word out, I think that will help.
One of your talking points here, I'm just going to read it, says, "Why do people struggle with going vegetarian?" There's a picture of Paul McCartney, who's one of the more famous vegetarians out there. He was grilling in his backyard in one of his houses, and he had all plant-based meat-looking products. Burgers, yes, sausages, chicken breasts, and they were all tofu. Do you think that that's sort of the, I hate to use the word withdrawal, but if people have food that looks like meat but isn't meat, that's like the first way to wean people off of meat?
Yeah, I can't speak for Sir Paul about that, but I can say that he was maybe demonstrating to people that, plant-based foods today are so different than they were just a few years ago. There's so many more plant-based meat alternatives coming to market. And I think it's important for people to realize that, because, people are used, like I said, used to eating meat. We're used to creating a menu around meat. And you mentioned earlier about holidays. They're always associated with meat of some sort. So if we can just find a plant-based substitute for that, then we can swap out the animal protein on our plate with one of these plant-based meat alternatives. And we can have a meal that tastes great and is so much better for the planet. So, for example, I'll just give you what Beyond Meat, they have a Beyond Burger. To create a Beyond Burger, it generates 90% less, fewer greenhouse gases. It uses 99% less water and requires 93 less land use than your average meat hamburger. So that's a huge win for the environment, and it tastes great. So I think of these plant-based meat alternatives as like a gateway plant-based food. They are processed, so they're not necessarily the most healthy thing. So I advocate for eating, whole foods. But I think these are great transitional foods for a lot of people. And I think, that's a great way to kind of win some people over to this idea because, it's still comfort food. Even though it doesn't come from an animal, it comes from plants, but a burger's, who doesn't like a good burger? I mean, I didn't give up meat. I don't think any plant-based eater gives up meat because they don't like the taste of meat. They don't like what it takes to get the meat to them, to the animal, and to the environment, and then what it does to their health. So, I think people will say sometimes, well, why are you making a plant-based burger? Well, I didn't stop eating burgers because I hated the taste.
There is a psychological aspect to that as well. What about fish in terms of environmental impact? Let's not go with the health issues at this point, just in terms of fishing.
One of the things that really blew my mind when I was researching this book and learning about the climate aspects of the meat industry. And of course, we know about carbon dioxide. That is what is a greenhouse gas that's generated from burning fossil fuels. But there's a more potent greenhouse gas that's generated in animal agriculture called methane. And over a 100-year period, methane is 25 times more potent at trapping heat in our atmosphere than carbon dioxide. And the EPA says the largest source of methane in the United States comes from livestock. So you might think, okay, well let's eat fish then. Well, my research the research I found is saying that some fish have as much of a carbon footprint as beef, depending on how it's raised. And that blew my mind because I would have thought that fish would have had a much lower carbon footprint. But it just depends on whether they're fished in the wild or whether they're from fish farms. It makes a big difference. And a lot of the fish now, especially in Europe, comes from fish farms, and they have a very high carbon footprint.
We do have to wind this down. We are out of time. Your book is called Escape the Meatrix. My guest is Stuart Waldner. Is the book out and available now?
It comes out October 11th, and it's available on Amazon. And yeah, they can find me at stuartwaldner.com, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Okay, great. Well, Stuart, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your information, and we look forward to the book coming out. You said on the 11th this month?
October 11th, yes.
Okay.
It's coming up quickly.
It is indeed. Thanks again for coming on. Best of luck.
Oh, thank you, Douglas. I appreciate your help. Thanks.